Okay, section 10.6. Secants, tangents, and angle measures. A secant is a line that intersects a circle in exactly 2 points. A secant is a line that intersects a circle at exactly 2 points. So here, this red line is a secant. Alright, it cuts through the circle, it hits it in 2 places. This blue line is also a secant. Okay? A line intersects a circle at exactly 2 points. So when those lines intersect that circle at 2 points, they create angles. In this case, there's 4 angles created right here, and there's also 4 arcs created right here. And Theorem 10.12 talks about how to find the angle measures of those arcs that are created. So let's name this angle number 1 and this angle number 2. And we're going to label these points right here, A, B, C, and D. Okay? And here's your formula to find the angle measures that are formed by the 2 secants. We'll start off with the measure of angle 1. The measure of angle 1 is going to be equal to 1/2 times arc AB plus arc DC or CD. Angle 1 right here is going to be equal to 1/2 times arc AB plus arc CD. The intercepted arcs. The measure of angle 2. The measure of angle 2 is going to be equal to 1/2 times. Now, angle 2 is connected to or related to arc BC, and the vertical angle to angle 2 is connected to arc AD. So the measure of angle 2 is going to be equal to 1/2 times arc BC plus arc AD. You guys see it? Do you see the difference in the 2 formulas? Don't write this, just watch for a second. If you got a circle and it's got some tangents, this angle, alright, x is going to be equal to 1/2 times this arc right here plus this arc right here. Everybody see that? It's the intercepted arc of the angle you're trying to find, and then its vertical angle, these 2 angles will be the same, won't they? Because they're vertical angles. So x equals 1/2 times this arc plus this arc. If this was a y right here, then y would be equal to 1/2 this arc plus this arc. Okay? Does everybody see that? Anybody not see that? Alright, so let's do a couple of example problems. Turn the page. Take a look at example 1 on the top of page 742. You got this picture, you got a couple of intersecting chords. This is your X. This arc is 130, and this arc is 84. Alright, so the measure of X, the measure of angle X, is going to be equal to 1/2 times, alright, it's the 130 plus the 84. See it? You can do that in your calculator. The measure of angle X is going to be equal to 1/2 times, take 130 and add 84 to it. So that's 1/2 of 214, which equals 107. There's your X. Does everybody see that? Alright. Let's look at that second example. Again, you got two chords intersecting. Now, here's where you got to be careful. In this problem, you have to notice where the X is. The arcs that I'm squiggly lining right here, those are the intercepted arcs for angle X. The common mistake would be that X is equal to 1/2 times 75 plus 143. That's not the case. What you have to do in this problem is you have to solve for this angle first. Alright? Because that's the intercepted arc. Those are the intercepted arcs that are given. So you need to give this a letter. Call it Y. And Y would be equal to 1/2 times 75 plus 143. Okay? You need to go ahead and solve for Y. So that would be 1/2 times 75 plus 143. That's 218. So Y is going to be equal to 1/2 of 218. 109. Now you had to find Y, or you had to find this angle so that you could find angle X. Because these two angles right here, they're a linear pair. So X is going to be equal to 180 minus 109. So your X in this picture is equal to 71. So be careful when you're setting up the problem, and identify where the X is and what other information is given. That problem is different than the first example we did. Alright, let's look at example 1C. You got, you've got this picture. You're given this 92 right here. That's an arc. You're given an angle measure of 110, and you're asked to find an arc measure. Now the X is in a different place again. But the theorem, the formula that you wrote down at the beginning of all this was that this angle, let's go back to that for a second. This angle is equal to 1/2 times the sum of the two intercepted arcs. So the angle equals 1/2 times arc plus arc. If you look at this picture, now you're given the angle. So the angle equals 1/2 times the arc plus the arc. So that's going to be x plus 92. Alright? The angle equals 1/2 times arc plus arc. And those arcs have to be the intercepted arcs. Alright, so here the 110 is the angle equals 1/2 times arc plus arc. So in this problem, you can divide both sides by 1/2. And that will save you some time. So take 110 and divide it by 1/2. Let's see, that's going to be 110 divided by 0.5. It's 220. So 220 equals x plus 92. And then you could subtract 92 from each side. And 220 minus 92. 128 is equal to x. Does everybody see those three different types of problems? Alright, the variable that you're solving for was in a different place on each problem. So when you're doing those problems, make sure that you identify where the variable is before you set up your equation. That make sense to everybody? Alright, so here's a couple of practice problems for you to do today. On page 745, problems 1 through 3. And then over on the next page, 8 through 11. And be sure that you show all your work.